All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of the Good Life Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Vrooman Derrick, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Vrooman and Derrick Kleeb, who are the owners of Heartland 3D. So, guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, let's get into it and get to know you guys a little bit more. What books are you reading or listening to right now?
You can go first.
I'll start it off. So I travel quite a bit for work. So
Okay.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of audio books.
Okay.
Sometimes, so right now, listening to Extreme Ownership by Jocko.
Yeah, great book.
I've listened to it before, but I think what I'm trying to do now is I'm listening to it, going back and gonna read the book.
Yeah.
Because you miss out on some things there. But I also have a kind of a schedule of podcasts that I listen to.
Okay.
Specifically, been listening to the Motley Fool podcast.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Investing, just for the individual investor in the stock market. Also, Peter Schiff is kind of a new podcast for me.
Okay.
And he's an economist, kind of a bear market economist.
Okay.
Kind of interesting to see different perspectives of people as they're kind of navigating the current, economic climate. So
Sure.
I find that one interesting. Of course, I do listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. So
Yep.
Definitely certain people there who I hit up on my trips.
Yeah. If you've got a long road trip, that's a really good podcast. I've been listening to Joe Rogan a lot lately, so it's really good.
Occasionally there's people they don't catch my attention.
Right.
I have certain interests that are more interesting to me than others.
Sure.
But,
Yeah, that's a good one. How about you, Justin?
For me, I kind of have I'm not as extensive a podcast listener, but Stuff You Should Know, Planet Money, How I Built This, like another business podcast talking about how people built their businesses. I like to run. I'm on the UNK cross country and track team, so I listen to The Science of Running with Steve Magnus, with a couple of guys there. And then a smattering of other ones. Sometimes I'll listen to Freakonomics. It's an economics podcast.
Okay.
And kind of just whatever else I come across that seems interesting.
Stuff You Should Know is a pretty interesting podcast.
Yeah, I like it because you get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Like there's some weird stuff and some very practical stuff. Some is gross, but it's an interesting podcast.
Yeah, there's definitely sometimes I kind of pick and choose on that one.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I'll skip that one, and then other times like, man, this one, I need to listen to it right now.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, guys. So tell us more about Heartland 3D. We talked a little bit before. You guys are coming up on a year, so you're fairly new in business together. Tell us about your journey. And then also, I'll admit, when it comes to 3D printing, I know it's out there, but I don't know a lot of the uses and things like that. So just kind of talk about why you guys decided 3D printing, or why that was something that you wanted to get into. So just kind of tell us about your journey.
So it really all started with Craigslist ad, I guess.
Okay.
Derrick came up to me and he said, I found this ad on Craigslist where someone's selling their 3D printer business, but I think it's kind of overvalued. And so we went and we did a bunch of market research, kind of looking into our 3D printers, is that something it could be valued at? And while we were doing that research, we found out that, hey, this is something that we don't have to necessarily put all the capital into buying an existing one when we could start something ourselves.
Yeah.
And
no, it was kind of we're both techie, right? We're both programmers. We have extensive technology backgrounds. So when you see things, I have an extensive industrial automation background.
Okay.
Programming software to do things with hardware, which falls right into the 3D printing world. It's always kind of fascinating to see things being created. I think it's just fascinating in general, whether you do it yourself, you do it, in your work. It's just fun, and I think you get a lot of excitement out of it. And both Justin and I enjoy that process. So when we were looking at it, at first we were looking at, it's kind of like when you look at a printer, right? Just a regular printer. Most of your revenue is generated by your ink cartridges.
Sure.
It's not by the hardware themselves.
Right.
So you always have these consumables that are being, that are really your profit generators.
Yeah.
So we really started looking at all of the different, filaments that are out there. Certain filaments do have different properties, different characteristics than other things. And as we kind of went through the process of not only ourselves, we tinkered with it on our own, but then, as we started playing with it, we just started learning more and more about it. And there's just a lot of uses on, practical uses for a 3D printer that I don't think most people know.
Sure.
How can we spread that word? How can we, maybe generate how we feel about the excitement we feel about it to other people.
Got it. So where is Heartland 3D right now as far as a business? Are you guys are you selling printers? Are you selling the materials? Again, I'm an idiot on this stuff, so I don't even know what all that looks like. So just kind of explain like what you guys offer to the public.
So we offer printers as well as filament, and we do printing for people as well. That's kind of been more of, it's still in its infancy stage, just
okay.
Because as we learn with each different printer, because we kind of set up each printer that we get, so we know how to work it, and so we can talk to each customer that gets one if they have problems with it.
Sure.
So that's been something that's kind of grown as we get used to these new printers, and as our name starts to get out there, because our main goal starting it was maybe not necessarily to print things for people, but more to just sell printers and filament.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a great experience also printing those things for people who maybe aren't ready to buy a 3D printer. So it gives kind of an incentive then. It's like, hey, they printed this for me. Maybe if I got a 3D printer, I could learn how
Sure.
and keep printing those things.
Yeah.
And so, but I think it's been a little different than we thought too as of yet, which we both work full-time basically.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick full-time all year round, and then I'm full-time during the summer, and then school during the year. So it's been a tough challenge to balance the startup business with the existing business. So we thought filament would be the cash cow right away.
And filament's like the ink.
Yeah.
Like if you're
Yeah,
talking about like ink. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it comes in a spool, just a string of plastic basically, and that's what goes into the printer to make the different parts.
Yeah, and people are coming out and creating all different unique filaments now that can have these really strong characteristics. That you could get nylon, you can get carbon fiber, you can get these things that are really strong and can do things that I don't think most people realize they can do. So it's really interesting, and as we've explored it, there's been all these things that have opened up. We're exploring kind of the YouTube channel, like how can we teach people how to do these things? Where does that fall in? We've also have kind of started the process. We haven't completed this at looking at developing our own filament as well.
Okay.
Out of maybe something that can be locally sourced and generated, more of a renewable source. We purchased some equipment. We haven't calibrated it or worked with it yet, but we're in the stages of doing some research on
The next step.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's kind of like anything. If you get excited about it, you can take it so many different places.
Sure.
It's just really interesting to learn, not only, how you get the level of accuracy you want. There's a lot of things that go into the process of printing, whether it's, if someone really enjoys CAD, developing, products, creating things, and then turning it into a product, knowing that software, Justin, I don't know, hadn't had a lot of experience with it to start out with, but he's dove head on, learning how to create things, and that's all. As long as you're properly motivated, you can learn anything.
Sure.
And it's been exciting.
Nice. How fast is this evolving? Like, how fast is the technology changing, even since you guys started almost a year ago?
So when you think about the parts of a 3D printer, they've been around for decades. They've been used in CNC machines for years and years. There's always this thought of additive manufacturing, which is what they would consider 3D printing, where you're adding material to create something. Historically, when you wanted to create a very specific piece, you'd use a machine to either mill out, you'd cut away and create this piece. This gives you the ability to just add to and create the piece,
Okay.
which usually has less waste, but that's the part that's new. What's happened is you've seen a lot of people, especially on, when it comes to technology, people learning this, and the community in general. There's a strong community of people who are, what I'd consider just people interested in 3D printing. They're making a lot of the advances. Like, they're figuring out, hey, choose this nozzle size versus another nozzle size to get to really dial in your printer. Just understanding the technology to really dial in things. It's changing, but the pieces are staying relatively the same. I think what you're seeing is maybe the scale growing. So, most 3D printers are printing on a really small scale. You don't have like a huge piece that you can print, at least on the consumer side. Maybe on more the industrial size.
Okay.
There's some obviously some machines out there that can do it. 3D printing with metal versus plastic. It's growing, but making it so that way it's available to the consumer, it's getting really competitive. So.
And I'd say with that too, just the ease of use. And even through our various models, we have some, not necessarily older models, but some of them you get the printer and you're putting it mostly together yourself. Other ones, you basically take out the vertical piece of it, you put in 4 bolts, and it's ready to go. It auto levels, so the bed on it, usually when you get a printer, you have to level the bed to make sure that the print is even, and when the filament comes out of the nozzle, it keeps contact with the bed. So now they're coming out with printers that you pretty much put a couple bolts in, press auto level, and it's ready for you to start printing.
Wow.
So that makes it just a lot easier for consumers to get into it. Especially, I think, like Derek said, the parts are relatively the same, which is leading to the ability to have cheaper printers, not necessarily because they're lesser in quality, but because the parts have been around for so long that they found better ways to manufacture them in large quantities. So.
Got it. How long has 3D printing been around where, like, as far as where it could come into more of the consumer market?
So it's been around for a while. I think it kind of goes in spurts. I think what we saw when sometimes there's a need that pops up. I mean, COVID's a good example, right? There was this need for masks early on during the pandemic, and people with their 3D printers were just they were printing these masks out at home to really try to fulfill that need. And then people were stuck at home during the pandemic.
Sure.
We want to hone up on a new skill, a new technology. So people were learning different softwares. They were learning, maybe they were taking more time to educate themselves on something they didn't know previously. And 3D printers that was kind of a little boom during that time, because people were interested. They had the time to learn, and like anything, it's just getting started, right? Like the moment that they turn on the printer, that's the hardest part.
Sure.
Turning the power button on is usually the hardest part, and then the rest of it just goes downhill from there, because you start to see the capabilities. You find out, it's not as hard to operate as I thought it was going to be. I think that holds people back, is that fear. we're not smart enough to fear, you know, what we don't
Right.
know. We just like diving in and figuring it
Yeah,
out.
well, it's just, you know, like, okay, so this is gonna sound like a dumb question, but, so the filament you buy, is it already colored? Or
Yes.
it is?
Yep.
So you buy multiple different filaments depending on the color, and then like, do they all go into the machine at once, or does it depend?
So there's different,
So-
yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so usually it's just one at a time. You can buy different printers that have dual extrusion nozzles.
Okay.
And so that can come in a variety of forms where either there's two separate nozzles, and within the programming that's already set up for it, you just have to check a few different buttons essentially.
Sure.
You can tell it which color you want to print when, and there's also some that it's one nozzle and it'll just switch off between the two, but most printers are just one color. So if you want to print something multicolored with that, you just have to pause the print and switch out the filament and let it resume again.
Got it.
And that's one thing that's kind of advancing, is you're starting to see these companies that are, you know, they want to try to differentiate themselves from
Sure.
a different model, so that, you know, being able to extrude, you know, dual extruder. Now there's some printers that will do, you know, up to 4 from even on the consumer level.
Okay.
Just on the, you know, the commercial grade printers. So yeah,
Got it.
really growing.
Got it. Okay. Well, I could talk about printers all day, I think, because it interests me. But I want to talk to you guys about the business side of it, because a little bit unique. Where Justin, you're still, like I said, you're going to school,
Yep.
running track, cross country.
Track and cross country.
Yeah, track and cross country, as well as other stuff. Derek, you got a full-time job. So, I guess of this part of it, what has been your guys' favorite part of being small business owners with Heartland 3D?
I think for me it'd probably be the challenge.
Yeah.
Just knowing that there's a lot out there, that there's still to learn, but also just seeing how far we've come from the start, and just like the little things you have to do every day to make sure that you keep on top of it, like maintaining inventory and communicating with our manufacturer that manufactures the printers and the
Okay.
filament, and just building up those business relationships so that everything can continue to run smoothly.
Sure. Derek, how about you?
I'm very similar to Justin. I think the most exciting thing for me is just knowing that, hey, there's always going to be something new to learn about it. I think that's exciting. I like being a little uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
Because then you got to figure out how to get yourself comfortable
Yep.
with things. So that's somewhat exciting. Not knowing exactly where it's going to go kind of adds a little level of excitement. I also just enjoy the process of learn. You know, there were a lot of things that we had to integrate and learn. You know, for example, Shopify is what we use as our e-commerce platform.
Okay.
Just learning all the features in the software, and just all the quirks and the basically the abilities that as you learn, you're like, oh, you can do this, and oh, we can automate this. All those little things have really added a lot of excitement as we've learned. You know, also, you know, we're sourcing a lot of materials overseas, you know, navigating those relationships as well as those processes that are severely delayed at times, from, you know, purchase to getting your inventory. It's just interesting and new, and I think that's exciting.
Absolutely. How do you guys communicate? I mean, you don't have necessarily a storefront, and you're working a day job, and you know, a couple things going on during the day. Are you guys mainly texting? Are you calling each other after hours in the evening and talking about stuff?
A lot of texting. A lot of times we grab lunch.
Yeah.
You know, hash it out over lunch, or like in the evenings too. Sometimes but a lot of times over text or calling, just because, you know, it's just little things here and there, and then it'll come to the point where you have some big decisions, big things to group up on, and then we take care of those. But in a lot of it too, we're able to kind of modularize. So we'll each get a different task, and we'll kind of work on it, and then come back together and sort it out.
Yeah, I think we're both independent workers, so, you know, we can, hey, there's this task over here. Hey, I'll go do it. Same way with Justin. Be like, hey, and the nice thing that was really helpful is Justin had kind of gone through some of the process of creating an LLC. He's started other businesses before, and he manages a duplex that he lives in. So he's kind of been through this a little bit. So some of the things that were more new to me, he already had that knowledge and took it away.
Got it. Have your roles changed as far as how maybe it started when you guys kind of figure out who likes to do what, and who's better at what and all that?
I think so. Justin has been doing a bulk of the 3D printing materials.
Okay.
Kind of becoming the expert on the side of the understanding the equipment, how it works, working some of those customer relationships. I've spent a lot of time on the software side and the integration of all of our different pieces. Reaching out to suppliers, figuring out, hey, how can we source materials, these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I think we've seen it grow, and as we've learned, we obviously share those, what we learn with each other. I don't think there's a whole lot of things that are done right now that one or the other of us, at least in theory, could pick up if we
Got it. Okay. Very cool. So what's one thing that you guys wish you were better at with this business?
Time management sometimes is, there's only so many hours in a day.
Sure.
We got families, we got, Justin, he's running track, running cross country, going to school, working. I think there's just there's a lot of time. There's only so much time in a day, and splitting that pie so you can allocate enough time to every little piece of your life.
Sure.
I think maybe we both have a little bit of the personality that if you throw yourself into it and you put enough time to it, it just But you tend to neglect one thing or the other.
Sure.
So if you get really excited on something, the next thing you know, you're researching it into the late hours of the evening, like trying to figure it out. Well, maybe I need to step away. Setting some of those boundaries is not something that maybe comes natural to me.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And then I think marketing is another big thing for me. It really interests me, but I just I've had a couple classes in it, but I'm not to the point yet where it's something I've really developed in. So that's been kind of the challenge for me, that I wish I was a little bit better at generating material for social media and stuff like that. And this summer we have my sister working for us. She's a graphic design major at Fort Hays. So she's been able to kind of jumpstart some of that for us. So hopefully she can get us set on a good path, and I can kind of learn from her some more tips on how to keep that going.
Got it. So who is your what's your market? Who's your niche?
So it's funny when you start looking at, when we threw up our Shopify store, just to see it was from all over, as far as demographics. I think last I looked, we'd sold in 20 some different states.
Oh wow!
At this point, but generally your demographic is the hobbyist DIYer. I think we're seeing a lot of that. The tinkerer at home who wants to learn. You are finding even some of the machines that we're selling, which might not be more on the commercial end. You're seeing people using them to do like prototypes at different jobs. And I think we've seen a few companies reach out on some of those opportunities. Schools, we've gotten several people reaching out to try to build up their 3D printing labs for schools. So we're seeing it's kind of a wide variety. I definitely say it's more the consumer market right now for us. but as you build those maybe commercial type, the school markets, libraries seem to be getting into having a 3D printer.
Really?
It's really interesting, and in the Midwest we've actually seen not so much maybe in like Nebraska here, but North Dakota seems to have a really strong market. Fargo, for some reason, there's a lot of different businesses related to 3D printing there, and so it's kind of interesting. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Justin, that you've seen that maybe I'm not touching on?
I mean, I think you kind of hit on it. A lot of the people are people that maybe have gotten a little extra income or something like that, and they want to expand their skill set, expand their shop, be able to print more things or like create different things. And so the next step that they've determined is a 3D printer, which is a pretty good next step, because with a 3D printer and filament, you can pretty much print whatever you can think of and make on CAD, or like Derek was talking about earlier, how there's a really big community. There's websites that have tons of plans on them that you can just go out, find the plan, plug it into your printer, and you're good to go.
Wow. So it's kind of a unique, not unique, but a smaller group that is almost like hyper focused on this product and growing it, and
there's Thingiverse is one interesting website. People will build like just these little products they use in their everyday lives, and people find them to be interesting. They'll download it, print it on their printer. Maybe they'll make some modifications to it, re-upload it. It's a pretty strong community. And people are definitely willing to share their learnings, and people are even doing enhancements to the, there's a lot of customization to the, they buy a 3D printer and now they want to add upgrades. There's tons of possibilities there, and there's a real market for people looking to upgrade their 3D printers, which we've been looking into a couple of different suppliers who do a lot of the modifications, as well as we do them ourselves for people. So that's definitely another market we're looking at.
Very cool. As far as the pandemic, you guys really started. I mean, we kind of had an idea of what it looked like. I don't think we'd had the mask mandate yet as far as Kearney goes. The pandemic may not have really affected you guys that much at all, but still, you started a business in the middle of a pandemic. Was there any, and I guess just kind of walk through that, did that play into your thought process as far as starting this at all? Did it maybe, did you start looking, when you saw that business that was for sale, was it because of something that was pandemic related? Just talk about it, and it may be brief because it may not really affect you guys that much, but has there been any?
I could say it might be a little bit positive in some respects. I think we've seen probably a little bit of maybe stimulus money generate, some sales.
It was almost easier in some respects, because people had that time on their hands, had that time at home, and maybe had a little bit extra money that they could put towards something that maybe they've been thinking about getting for a while. And so it's almost been a little tougher now that we're coming out of the pandemic. People are opening up, going out and doing more things. They're not as focused inside on 3D printers, which is a good thing. But also it's been an interesting thing to see sales kind of dip down a little bit as people start to go out and about again.
Interesting. Did you ever have an idea that you would want to do a storefront, or did you know from the beginning that you wanted to at least start with online sales?
I think from the beginning we kind of thought online, because with our where we're both at in life, it was really appealing to have something that we could grow as we continue to work. And so what's the kind of the side business to begin with can then pretty easily become the main business down the road when you start with online, because once you get brick and mortar, you're talking a lot more financing, because you have a lot of costs of owning the building or renting a building,
Yep.
and then having someone there to sell the printers, or even if it's just a storage location that you're renting, it's a lot tougher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we also, you know, we were learning a lot of things in this process too, and it really allowed us to gain some momentum. Like sometimes you got to get some traction, and
Sure.
you know, you're kind of sometimes throwing darts at a dartboard. Like, you know, where is the niche at here, and it just kind of starts to evolve, and you start to see these different avenues. We've really been getting excited recently on, you know, kind of the teaching aspect of using the printers. I think we see definitely some opportunities there. So, you know, sometimes just because of it being a little organic, it kind of automatically kind of chooses your path for you, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think having that, starting with that storefront really helped us to kind of figure out our way.
Yeah. Well, and by helping people out with kind of teaching them how to use their printer, whatever it may be, you kind of take away that barrier of the unknown, the uncertainty of not, you know, not knowing what they're doing. You can help them out and get started and get them comfortable where they're starting right away. Yeah. So is this what you thought it would be?
It turned out to be more than I thought it would. You know, I think when you start looking at it depends on your perspective, right? I think you didn't realize how much opportunity there was. Like when we start, like it was amazing. Like when you know, we kind of started that storefront, how quickly things just started to pick up there, and you know, after a while, you know, we had some challenges, obviously. Like at one point it was, things were selling so fast, like we knew like we were selling out of inventory before we could you could get it back in. So trying to navigate those waters was not what we expected, or else we would have planned a little better.
Growing pains a little sooner than what you thought.
Yeah. But I don't know, Justin, what's from your perspective?
Like Derek said, I've had a little bit of previous experience starting businesses, so I kind of had an idea of how much work it was going to take, and so in that respect, it was pretty much what I thought it would be. But then also, like Derek touched on, how quickly having that online store made things take off with just a little bit of money into like ad marketing, and how we were able to kind of just see some instant success, even though like we started it not that long before that.
Sure.
Yeah, and that was a whole other thing, like for us to learn, like, hey, you know, we knew about the ad marketing campaigns and how you can use them, but we didn't know, you know, trying to then build the data up to know, like, hey, how do you efficiently spend your ad revenue dollars to get payback on that, and that's kind of interesting. And I think we still got some learning curve issues there we need to work through, but
I don't think that ever stops.
yeah, I think it's just interesting.
Yeah, when it comes to that side of it, the marketing, especially on social media, I mean, it just changes so fast. There's so much to know, and it changes so fast. So yeah, I fight that battle too. So if you could go back 11 months and give yourself any advice, would you talk to each other about doing something different, or would you just let things go as they happen?
I don't know what I would have changed initially. I think from the moment it was an idea, we moved pretty fast there on this initially to get things up and going. I think we had some initial conversations. We kind of started doing our research, and we kind of went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And the next thing we knew, we were opening the storefront. We kind of had got our first shipment in. I think the hardest part was waiting for that first shipment of stuff to arrive. That
Sure.
we could start tinkering ourselves and learning the new products.
Yeah.
As far as maybe what we you know, one thing Justin touched on is, you know, we didn't have a ton of marketing experience. You know, we were busy, spent a lot of time researching the products and what was out there, the features, and just exploring, you know, other people who explored the same business path, you know, how they kind of got started, what their presence looks like now.
Sure.
And not really, like, didn't really think of the marketing side of things. So, you know, you could have maybe redirected some of that time spent researching to more on the marketing side. But in the end, that'll catch up with us.
Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely having more of a social media backlog built up so that when we did start, we could instantly start putting stuff out there and just start connecting with people in that way, because I think ultimately that's going to create a lot of sales and a lot of repeat customers, people that can connect with you through that and then see what you're doing, how you're evolving as a company. Whereas with just only the online storefront, people don't necessarily get to know who we are as much, or as much about the business and as much about 3D printing.
Sure.
When you just have the printers and the filament. So I think one piece of advice I'd give myself was kind of expand more that way.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you guys have been not surprised, but it's been interesting to kind of figure out who would be buying the printers from you. But it seems like if you can do a good job with the sales and the service aspect, as people tinker and get better with their printer, and then they want to upgrade or they want to do something different, they know where to go.
Exactly, and I think that's a big portion of what we try to stay strong with, is when people reach out with a problem or with a question, being able to get back to them quickly, because even bigger than selling printers and selling filament, it's customer service, because if the customer's not happy, like you said, they're not going to come back and buy something else. So
Exactly. All right, last question. Someone comes to either one of you and they said, I want to start a small business. What advice through your guys' experience would you give them?
Don't overthink it.
Yeah?
Don't overthink it. I mean, and this is coming from someone who wants to overthink everything, but don't overthink it. If you're interested in something, you're only gonna live once. You can really get that paralysis by analysis if you think too long. The worst thing that will ever happen is you'll fail, and then you'll succeed on something else. So,
right.
That's my advice, Justin.
I mean, we're pretty similar, as you maybe can tell, because usually he takes my answer and then I spend a little bit of time trying to think of a different one to get some variety. But I'd say kind of along that same lines, don't overthink it, do your research, but in a lot of ways it's beneficial to move pretty quickly. Because if you have an idea that you're passionate about and that you think could really grow into something, you don't want to wait to act on it, because you never know when someone else is going to have that same idea and could take it out from under you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a fine line of doing your research, making sure you have things in line, but at the same time not just sitting there and dwelling on it, but actually taking action and going forward. So guys, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure to get to know you guys better, get to know about your business better. Where can we find out more about Heartland 3D?
So our website's heartland3d.com. We just started a Facebook and Instagram page, both also at Heartland 3D. So hopefully YouTube channel coming soon. Keep you updated on that on our social media.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks guys, appreciate it.